All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er Monday update. And, of course, Pig and a Pickle, two locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go get the brisket. Go get the brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon and Mary and tell them that Krug sent you. And this video is also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check that link in the description and type in the promo code Krug, K-R-U-E-G, and they'll match you up to your first $100. This week in Underdog with the Monday night game, I'm going with Ty Chandler of the Vikings, higher than 47.5 combined rushing and receiving yards. Cole Kmet of the Bears, higher than 36.5 receiving yards. Justin Fields, lower than 67.3 completion percentage. Montez Sweat, higher than a half a sack. And DJ Moore, lower than 9 targets. You can do the same as me, or you can, of course, do your own. Make sure you choose that, type in Krug in the promo code, and they'll match you for your first $100. All right, let's talk a little 49ers on this Monday. Number of interesting stories surrounding the 49ers that we want to get to. The big one, or at least the most prominent one, is the 49ers are bringing in defensive back Anthony Averett for a workout today, according to Tom Pelissero. And this comes after the safety George Odom reportedly suffered a torn biceps, which jeopardizes his availability for the remainder of the season. Talanoa Fonga was already lost for the year due to a torn ACL suffered in Week 11 in the Niners' win over the Buccaneers. The Niners actually signed Averett back in August, but cut him a few weeks later after he picked up an injury. He subsequently signed with the Detroit Lions practice squad on October 10th and then got released from their practice squad on November the 14th. So one name, at least the 49ers have been considering for a signing to add another defensive back. Now, a couple other notes today. Bunch of notes on the Niners that I think are kind of interesting. The Eagles are the third worst 10-1 team ever, according to DVOA. So that may explain why the 49ers are currently a 3-point favorite heading into this matchup on Sunday, despite being 8-3 and playing on the road against a 10-1 football team. If you look at the DVOA numbers, which some people think are all encompassing, this is not a vintage Eagles team. I don't know if I believe that after watching them knock off the Buffalo Bills yesterday. Well, if there wasn't enough bad blood already, Hasson Reddick, who last year knocked Brock Purdy out of the NFC Championship game by ripping his elbow back on a throw, and of course, subsequently, Purdy tore some ligaments in the elbow, essentially ending the NFC Championship game. Reddick was talking today in Philadelphia about the upcoming matchup. He says, talk is cheap. They get to come back in the link. It was a lot of boo-hoos last year, a lot of crying, a lot of what-ifs, a lot of this, a lot of that. They get a chance to come back in here, line that S up, and prove it again. So it's amazing how the Eagles, who talked endlessly at the end of the Super Bowl about if the field conditions had been better in the Super Bowl, we wouldn't have slipped and fallen so many times, and the Chiefs wouldn't have gotten the Super Bowl victory. So they talked a lot of mess after losing the Super Bowl to the Chiefs, but then they don't like it when the Niners bring up the what-if game when it comes to their quarterback getting knocked out on the 6th play of the NFC Championship game. So anyway, there's not a lot of love lost between these two teams, and they get it on Sunday. As far as the 49ers, they're not going to have any excuses. They get 3 days of extra rest. They get a Philly team that has some major injuries. Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox. The Philly defense just played 92 snaps against Buffalo, 72 the week before against Kansas City, while the Niners have extra rest and are coming off of 2 wins in a row and are feeling pretty good. Now, Philly's defense is number 17 DVOA, and their third down defense is even worse than that. I think it's 27th in the league. Their run defense has been number 19 DVOA. And so this is going to be interesting because the 49ers have the number 1 DVOA offense rolling in, and they should have an advantage in this game if you look at those numbers. The Niners are a 3-point favorite against the Eagles, and it's amazing. That's the Eagles are the first 10-1 or better team in the history of the NFL to be a home underdog. So I don't know if Vegas knows something or not, or if they're just trying to get 49er fans to wager, or they're just trying to do whatever they're trying to do. But that to me is interesting. So it all starts up front on the Eagles on defense. They're not as deep as last year. The pass rush has not been as dominant. Last year they had 70 sacks. Eagles are tied for 11th in sacks right now with 32. They're 5th in pass rush win rate. They rank 28th in pressure percentage, 21st in sack percentage. Against the run, they're tied for 11th in yards per rush allowed, 4.1. 12th in defensive rush per play success, and they rank 2nd in run stop win rate. So big Jordan Davis is probably going to get some serious time in the middle. He also got dinged up in this game against Buffalo over the weekend. His 48% run stop rate is 2nd in the NFL. He's only played 317 snaps, and it will be interesting to see how many snaps big Jordan Davis is out there for on Sunday against the 49ers. Couple other notes from this one I think that are kind of interesting. Point differentials. If you look at point differentials between the Niners and the Eagles are plus 64 on the year. That means they have scored 64 more points on offense than their defense has allowed. The 49ers in point differentials are plus 140. So that's either advantage 49ers because they've been collectively offense, defense more dominant than their opponents, or maybe you could look at that and say the Eagles have played in more close games, and so they're more battle tested. It is interesting, as good a year as Christian McCaffrey has had as far as rushing touchdowns, he has 11, and Jalen Hurts also has 11. So stopping Hurts in the rushing game might be one of the biggest keys to winning on Sunday for the 49ers. The Niners announced today that they've activated Robert Beal Jr. from the IR, and in order to make room on the roster, they put George Odom on the injured reserve list. So Odom's got the torn bicep. Beal Jr. is now been activated. Beal Jr., of course, is a burner. He runs in the high 4.4s, or at least did in his workouts prior to the draft. And it's going to be interesting to see what he can do, if anything, on special teams or as a rusher from scrimmage in this game against the 49ers. In this game against the Eagles, I mean. He's a twitchy edge rusher out of Georgia. Niners had an open roster spot with Odom going on the IR. What does that mean as far as the safety replacement for George Odom? Well, I really believe the 49ers probably cannot find a safety that's better than Taylor Hawkins. Hawkins is probably going to be the backup safety who gets moved from the practice squad and activated for the games going forward. You got to remember Taylor Hawkins. If you're a college football fan, he was a very, very good player at San Diego State. Now, he played the corner at San Diego State. Last year, he tried to bulk up and play safety. I thought he added some bad weight. This year, he showed up in training camp faster and quicker than ever, looking like he was in the best shape of his life, and really had a very good training camp, and then got cut as the roster got pared down. But Taylor Hawkins is not a slouch. He's a pretty good football player, and I'll be interested to see if they activate him. My guess is they will, and I really like Taylor Hawkins. I think he's heady. I think he's smart. He can play corner. He can cover like a corner because he was a corner, but he also has got size and striking ability like a safety. So it's interesting. You get two quarterbacks this weekend in Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts that I think are very, very similar. And just looking at some of the comparisons, Purdy's record as an NFL starter, 13-3. Hurts is 27-2 in his last 29 starts. Purdy's probably the better passer if you look at the stats. Purdy's completion percentage, 70.2. He's got 19 touchdowns, 6 picks. He's averaging 9.4 yards per pass attempt. His quarterback rating is an NFL best, 112.4. Then you look at Hurts by comparison. He's completing 67.6%, which is still good, but not 70%. He's tossed 18 touchdowns and 10 picks. He's averaged 7.5 yards per pass attempt, and his quarterback rating is 94.9. So there's an advantage there for Brock Purdy. But now if you look at the two quarterbacks from a rushing perspective, Hurts is clearly better. He's a much better runner. Purdy's a good scrambler. He's got 122 rushing yards, 12 first downs, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Hurts has run for 410 yards, 49 rushing first downs, 11 rushing touchdowns. As we said, the same number as Christian McCaffrey. So definitely advantage Jalen Hurts there. So if you look at it as far as total touchdowns, Hurts has scored 29 touchdowns this year. Purdy's accounted for 21. Interestingly enough, as I already mentioned, the Chiefs and the Bills both won the time of possession game against Philly. Does that have a carryover effect? Kansas City kept Philly's defense on the field for 74 plays and 32 minutes of possession time. The Bills ran 92 offensive plays and possessed the ball for over 40 minutes. So how much will that be advantage Niners going up against somewhat of a gassed Philly defense? So that's going to be really interesting. And as far as Lane Johnson, the star right tackle, future Hall of Famer, he's considered day-to-day. He had an MRI on his groin, and he's not been ruled out against the 49ers, this according to Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network. Also, one other note that may be of interest to the 49ers and maybe not. The Raiders cut today Pro Bowl cornerback Marcus Peters, according to Vic Tafur. Peters apparently had given minimal effort on some plays and was seen standing by himself on the sideline. Clearly, there's some issue there. He's a Bay Area native. I don't know if the 49ers would have interest in taking him on. He did have a pick 6 against Jared Goff earlier this season, but that's his only interception of the year. He's kind of known as a guy who will gamble. And you kind of wonder, would the 49ers want to take on that kind of player? And one other NFL note that I think is really interesting, Adam Schefter reported today on a league-wide note that there could be as many as 7 to 10 new NFL head coaches at the end of the year. And I went and looked at the guys who potentially could be fired at the end of the year. And I think that might be a tad conservative, to be honest. I know you hear that number, you say, wow, that seems like a high number, 7 to 10 coaches being fired. But I would say there's 13 that could wind up being fired. And I look at it this way, or when I say fired, changing jobs. Bill Belichick is not safe in New England, according to reports, despite the fact he's one of the greatest coaches that's ever coached. Robert Saleh, is he on the hot seat in New York? If it was another franchise, I would say no, but in New York, anything's possible. If the Bills don't make the playoffs, and I don't believe the Bills are going to make the playoffs, Sean McDermott, who's a very good defensive coach, could get the axe in Buffalo. The Browns could fire Kevin Stefanski. I think the Raiders are very likely to move on from their interim head coach, Antonio Pierce. They've already gotten rid of Josh McDaniels. The Chargers almost assuredly are going to fire Brandon Staley. Now, the Giants, I think, are probably going to wind up keeping Brian Daboll, but they've had a nightmarish year. The Commanders, I think, say goodbye to Ron Rivera. The Bears may get rid of Matt Eberflus, though he just started there. The Panthers today got fired head coach Frank Reich. The Saints, are they going to keep Dennis Allen? I don't know. Are the Falcons going to keep Arthur Smith? And then if Belichick gets fired in New England, there's a lot of speculation that Jerry Jones and the Cowboys may offer Belichick a huge, sizable amount of money to just coach the football team there. And that means that Mike McCarthy could be out in Dallas. So that is interesting. That's 13. And I would say probably Brian Daboll returns. The other 12 could easily change head coaches, those other 12 teams. So this may be an epic, what they call Black Monday, the Monday after the final game of Week 17 in the NFL's regular season. As far as who is going to be the Panthers' next head coach, the betting favorite is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. He's a 5-1 shot right now to land that job, followed by Jim Caldwell at 6-1, Jim Harbaugh at 7-1, Ejiro Evero, a defensive coach, at 7-1, Eric Bieniemy at 9-1, Brian Johnson at 9-1, Mike McDonald at 10-1, Bill Belichick at 12-1, Thomas Brown at 12-1. Bobby Slowick of the Texans at 14-1, the ex-Niner assistant coach. Dan Quinn at 14-1. Gerard Mayo, 14-1. Lincoln Riley, USC's head coach, is on this list at 16-1. Brian Flores at 16-1. Chris Tabor, 16-1. Kellen Moore, 16-1. And Raheem Morris at 20-1. Some of the interesting notes there as we get closer towards the end of the regular season. All right, that does it for your 49er update video. Niners and Eagles go on Sunday at the Link in Philly. Already, Hasson Reddick's throwing some bad blood quotes around, and it's only going to get juicier between now and Sunday. The Niners are a field goal favorite to beat the Eagles in Week 13. Wouldn't that be something if the Niners rolled into the Link and handed the Eagles only their second loss of the year? But anything's possible in the NFL. Why? Well, guess who the Eagles' first loss is to? That's right. If you guessed it, the Jets. Very, very, very unlikely. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video. And thanks to all of you guys for checking out the Krug Show on YouTube.